Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Jisha Krishnan, and today I have with me two mental health professionals who will help us decode and understand better how do we approach mental health problems, when do we seek help, and most importantly, whom do we seek help from? It gives me immense pleasure to welcome today Dr. Debanjan Banerjee, who is a psychiatrist with the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, NIMHANS, in Bangalore. Welcome, Dr. Debanjan. And Dr. Apurva Kumar Pandya, who is a psychologist who is working with the Indian Institute of Public Health, Gandhinagar in Gujarat. Welcome, Dr. Apurva. Thank you so much for joining us today. So let me just start by asking you both, what is the basic difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist? How different is your area of work? So Dr. Debanjan, if you want to start first.
Yeah, I think this is one thing which, we just start with when we try to explain whom to go to for seeking help. And at the very outset, these two streams are like, the two ends of kind of mental health, which are complementary to each other. To put it very simply, a psychiatrist is a medical doctor who can prescribe medicines if necessary. And the background is usually somebody who has done an MBBS and then a specialization in the field of psychiatry. Psychologist, on the other hand, psychology is a broad field, and it's a field that deals with mental health again. Usually do not prescribe medicines, and depending on the field, for example, there is social psychology, clinical psychology, industrial psychology. Mainly in mental health, we deal with clinical psychologists who, after their masters, they usually do MPhil, and they become registered with the RCI, Rehabilitation Council of India, and may or may not do PhD thereafter. They usually help with psychological assessments, counseling, psychotherapy, and also in rehabilitation. So the referrals happen mutually, either from a psychiatrist to a psychologist or vice versa. But both of them form very important and independent components of mental health team. So I would put it in that way.
Okay, I think that gives us a good idea. I know that Dr. Apurva has been working in the area of counseling and training and research for very long. So when is it that people can approach somebody like you, say somebody like a counselor or somebody like a therapist? Because many times you interchange everybody. You think a psychologist is the same as a therapist, is the same as a counselor. And nowadays we have life coaches as well. So when do you come in, Dr. Apurva?
Yeah. So what Dr. Debanjan has said, I would like to add that, as far as clinical mental health is concerned, a clinical psychologist play an important role. But when it comes to preventive part, other psychologists like health psychologists, counseling psychologists, who may provide basic counseling services. There are trained psychotherapists. So psychotherapists are those who are trained in any of the psychotherapy, like it can be cognitive behavior therapy or solution-focused therapy. It can be many psychotherapies which are already established for their work in addressing many mental health issues. However, they should be certified and trained enough, because counseling is different and psychotherapy is certainly different. So there are many psychiatrists who take additional training in psychotherapy so they can provide psychotherapy. There are clinical psychologists who are trained in psychotherapy and provide psychotherapy. And there are psychologists who are not clinical psychologists, because clinical psychologists in India are those who do their MPhil in clinical psychology and get registered with RCI. So certainly they are different, and many psychologists who are not clinical psychologists but working in the field of counseling and mental health and who are trained in psychotherapy can provide psychotherapy. So our role, mainly those who are not clinical psychology, we do work in the area of research, primarily in preventive mental health issues, like providing training, providing psychoeducation, and basic counseling of those problems which are manageable, which are not clinically diagnosable.
That's a very interesting point because it brings me to my question where when do you know that you need medical help? Like, we have been in this pandemic for so long and most of us are dealing with so many issues. How do I know that my issues are something that needs some sort of professional help? When do I know I need to come and meet a psychiatrist or a psychologist? Dr. Debanjan, if you want to take that first.
Yeah, thanks, Jisha. I think that's a very relevant question. And as Dr. Apurva mentioned, that, like any other health, mental health also starts with prevention. So if we can prevent a small problem from going into a major problem, it's of course better. In our prior discussions in health analytics, as well as in my articles, I always mention about this line between what is normal stress or what is acceptable stress, which we all have been facing over the last 1.5 years, versus what is distress, or what is harmful stress. So something which tips you off, your body starts demanding for more, you feel restless, you feel uncomfortable. And there are certain very basic signs for that. For example, it can affect your body. You can start having headaches, issues with your stomach, indigestion, things like palpitation, your heart beating fast, or having sleep problems, issues with appetite. On the other hand, you may feel restless, edgy, you may start missing your classes, your work, the absenteeism creeps in, you're not able to deliver your best. So I always say that your mind and your body is the best judge. They will tell you. So stress, yes, as you rightly said, that during pandemic times, we all have been stressed, and to a certain extent, it is acceptable. But when it kind of crosses the threshold, and usually what happens is, see, if you're having a headache and it doesn't come down, you usually rush to take help. But when you don't feel good, let's say you're not in the best of your mood, you kind of always try pushing so that, somewhere you feel better. But if it doesn't work out, 2 days, 3 days, a week, it doesn't work out, that's the time probably when you need to seek professional help. And by this, I don't mean that you are in a diagnosed medical condition. But even before that, the reason why you need to seek help is so that a distress doesn't proceed to become a frank mental health disorder. And there is where the most important intervention lies.
Okay. Dr. Apurva, would you like to add to that of where counseling comes into this?
Certainly. And this is very important point that, many of the mental health disorders can be prevented. It starts with stress. And if you learn how to manage that, how to manage our stress better way, that it doesn't become distress, and prolonged distress can lead to mental illnesses. So I emphasize 3 major areas to understand where do we need to take professional help. When any stress or any problem disturb your daily routine, then it is a red flag that, okay, there is something that I need to be aware of. Second, when stress or any other emotional issues disturb your relationship. And the third, when it disturbs your productivity at workplace or in business or in your daily work. If these 3 factors are affected for more than 1 month continuously, it is a time to seek professional help. And this is a time where preventive interventions found to be very effective.
I think that's a very valid point because most of us perhaps wait too long or wait for things to get better by itself, but then maybe we need to seek help at that point, at the right point.
Yes.
If I may just, add a line, if I can. So,
sure.
I just wanted to tell that this threshold that both myself and Dr. Apurva mentioned, now it's important to remember that each of our threshold, all 3 of us are conversing, all of our thresholds are different. So many times we think, that what if I seek help? I may not be perceived as a strong person because my friend underwent, let's say, major events in life and could, he or she didn't need help. So this threshold which tips you off, which disturbs your daily activity, functioning, your relationships, this can be a week for me, a month for you, 4 months for someone else. So it's important to understand with your own perspective, and this is something which cannot be compared. So I just wanted to add this.
I think that is a valid point, because most of us compare it with our friends and family, and we assume if somebody went through a life-altering situation in a certain way, we should be able to do it too. Also, doctor, since we deal with so much of medical misconception at first check, one of the things that we come across often is that people believe that medical illness is not curable. It's like once you are diagnosed with a disease, it's for life. How true is this? And are there enough instances? Do we have enough data and research to prove that there is cure for medical illness? Dr. Debanjan?
So you mean mental illness, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Jisha, I think, this is a very, very valid question. And I really want to take this opportunity to convey to all the listeners, and our audience, that like any other form of illness, psychiatric illness, psychological illness, mental illness, whichever way you term it, they can totally be treated. There are different ways, like Dr. Apurva works in the field of counseling, preventive aspects of it. Clinical psychologists will work with a person who is having a problem. So we deal with medications and therapy and, kind of the other aspects of care. But again, it's important to understand that when we are talking about mental illness, we are talking about NCD, that is non-communicable disorders. And even if you talk about diabetes, high blood pressure, that is hypertension, thyroid issues, osteoarthritis, which many of the senior citizens are affected from, these are all grouped into non-communicable disorders because these are not infections. They have different causes. So we call them multifactorial. Mental illnesses are also like that. So, when we are looking at the concept of cure, I always like to put it in a way of the concept of recovery. Let's say I am depressed, and we always say that depression is a major mental illness. And it's not just about feeling sad. So let's say my appetite, my sleep, my the jitteriness, the anxiety that I'm feeling, that has improved. But somewhere I'm still not fit probably to go and work, or I'm not as interactive as I was before. So in all non-communicable illnesses, there are different steps of betterment or steps of recovery. So the problem that happens is most of the times people come to us with an expectation that you give the medicines and after 2 or 3 days, I become better, I change. So besides, and there is nothing wrong with the expectation. I mean, if I'm suffering with something, so I'm so distressed, I can always expect that. It's very important that as mental health professionals, and I always take that onus on ourselves, we sit and explain to them, like we are all doing now, that when we are looking at improvement, we are looking at short-term goals and long-term goals. So what symptoms will improve now? What will improve 6 months down the line? And when a person will be again completely recovering, that depends on the individual, whether there is a genetic load of the illness, how severe the illness is, at what stage the person has come to us, how long the person is being treated, whether the person has responded to other medications, and most importantly, the social and the family support system. So as you see, there are multiple factors involved here. But yes, each of them can be worked with, and most of it can actually be treated. And a lot of the people who actually get treated for mental illness are able to go back to the community and lead their normal lives.
Okay. So what I hear, Dr. Debanjan, is not to treat it like a flu, where you think that you'll take antibiotics probably for 3 days and get cured, but look at it as management of a disease and you get better over time. That's a great analogy. I think that's how we should look at it.
And that involves change in lifestyle as well, as Dr. Apurva was mentioning.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
There are no miracle goals, no miracle cures, and no silver bullets here. Just a consistent way of getting it right. But
Yeah.
Dr. Apurva, you work so much in the area of research. Are there any interesting, promising research that sheds light on the kind of treatments that we are looking at for mental health?
Yeah. So, of course, there are many researches that suggest, earlier you seek support, earlier you seek professional help, better is the prognosis and recovery. So the first, when we talk about psychiatric illness or mental disorders, most of the time, due to stigma, we do not seek support. We only seek support when we develop certain level of disability. And that's the time it becomes chronic. And it takes time. The prognosis is difficult and recovery takes longer time. But if individual identifies the red flags and start taking help, it has better prognosis and better recovery. Few, randomized controlled trials which are done in India and many other developing countries regarding lay counseling, they found that the person with training on counseling, and that person can be health worker or any non-health specialist, can deliver preventive mental health services in terms of identifying distress, in terms of providing psychological first aid, in terms of providing referral, have been found very effective.
So, Dr. Apurva, let me just ask you one question there, because I know, and we all perhaps know, a lot of people who are struggling with a lot of things, but because of certain barriers, social, psychological, not very medically sound, they are convinced that with time it will get better. What is your suggestion? Because you're saying the earlier you seek help, the better it is. So if you get 5 minutes with this person to convince the person that you need to seek help now, what would you say?
Yeah. So the first is that, unlike, just like physical illness, where we usually tend to take immediate help, mental illness or mental health problems are also same. We need to take help as soon as possible. We do not need to wait for, feeling of sadness become depression or clinically diagnosable depression. So, what I suggest is, whenever you feel that you are unable to manage your stress, is the time when we must start considering seeking professional help from counselor who is trained, or a certified counselor, or a psychologist who is working in the field, or maybe approach clinical psychologist to get oriented on certain life skills, certain skills to manage stress and demands of life effectively. So ultimately, there is the problems in dealing with life challenges and the demands which are overwhelming our own capacity and skills. It doesn't mean that we are not skilled, but at certain situation, we are unable to utilize those personal resources that a professionally trained person can help you identify and help you utilize those personal resources and build your resilience, which is very important aspect in dealing with mental health issues. And the second, why to wait for stress become distress? We can inculcate healthy habits, positive habits that can promote positive mental health and well-being. Like there are lifestyle changes that Dr. Debanjan has mentioned very correctly and aptly, that if we adopt a healthy lifestyle, we can able to prevent mental health problems, or maybe psychological distress, or prevent become maladaptive. So I would suggest to start with as soon as possible and adopt healthy practices and healthy lifestyles. That is the first point to start with being healthy
I like the point that you made about resilience, because I think a lot of people like to have a sense of empowerment. They like to feel that they're getting something back out of this. So, Dr. Debanjan, how do you approach your patients? I know a lot of patients who come to you have already been clinically diagnosed with a condition, but since there is this reluctance or stigma attached to it, how do you approach it? What is it that you say to your patients to make it more conducive environment for treatment?
Yeah, thanks, Jisha. So, see, one of the common fears, and that this is a rampant fear all over our country, is, and this significantly contributes to the stigma. That is that whenever I am, in terms of help seeking, many times what we see is that they have approached all the other sources of help and come to us at the last. And again, this fear contributes to it, that the moment I have a psychiatric problem, I will be prescribed medicines which are essentially toxic, which I have to continue throughout my life, which will mess with my brain and my system. I'll be dependent on them, and they are quote unquote drugs. Now, funny thing, there are many times we get people who are on, let's say, 3-4 different types of medicine. We have prescribed something for diabetes, for BP, for thyroid, for pain. Down the line, every single medicine will be continued. Only the psychiatric medicine will be stopped. Because, and this is a very common notion that moment we are giving something for the mind or something for the brain, that's something which is essentially toxic. And this is not the case. So like any other medicines, there are some psychiatric medicines which are safe, some which are not so safe, some which need not be taken in certain conditions. And this is universal in any field of medicine, just not in psychiatry. So the trick lies probably, in just taking a step back and having an extra mile, extra 5-10 minutes with the patient and with their family, sitting and explaining to them that, okay, these are your problems. This is what you can expect in 1 week. This is what you can expect in 3 months. This is when you can expect to be better. These are what medicines you need. This is how long you need it for. This is how long you may potentially need it for. And these are the side effects which you can expect. And if you do face them, you can always get back to me. I know that, there are a lot of factors related to patients which increase the stigma, misinformation. People come to us and sometimes the questions are endless. But let me put it in this way: if you can actually spend some bit of more time, even in a busy OPD, it goes a long way. And the trick lies probably, and I believe I'm still learning it, there's no end to learning it, is that how you can allay their queries in a non-threatening manner. And it's sad, but it's true that the stigma of psychiatry is not exclusive to the general public. It is very much in medical practitioners, in medical professionals, my own colleagues, our colleagues, and sometimes even among ourselves. So as long as we can deal with that, I think we'll be able to help our patients better as well.
I think that is a very, very important point, because sometimes I'm amazed by the number of doctors who do not either seem to understand it or who have so many misconceptions about mental health itself. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us today. And I'm sure there are millions of questions that need to be answered. So I'm just going to tell whoever is watching this to just shoot us the questions, and I will try to get both these experts to answer them for you. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a really insightful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on board, and thanks for this relevant conversation on mental health, which is very much needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jisha, from my end as well.